Ask any hunter who successfully worked in close proximity of a deer, elk, bighorn, sheep, or mountain goat wearing OptiFade open country concealment, and you'll hear the same thing over and over.
So I killed my elk this year at 10 yards wearing the open country pattern.
All season long we had deer close and we weren't getting picked off.
Literally looks right over at me, takes another step or two, puts his head down.
The thing looked right at me and let me draw my bow and shoot him.
I shot both of them under 20 yards. I think it was so cool.
Now, WL Gore and Associates, developers of GORE-TEX and OptiFade Concealment, have created the next science-based OptiFade concealment pattern, designed specifically to make tree stand hunters become nothing in the eyes of whitetail deer. I'm your host, Kurt Dowsett, and this is the science of nothing. As we've explored in previous episodes, the fundamental science behind the development of OptiFade concealment technology centers around micro and macro pattern configuration and the physiology of animal eyesight. OptiFade concealment technology effectively breaks up the human body's signature and blends it into the surrounding environment. The first OptiFade concealment pattern was designed and optimized for open country hunting environments like those typically found in the western portion of North America. Its effectiveness at concealing hunters from elk, mule deer, bighorn sheep, and mountain goats has been proven by some of the world's most avid hunters. Now, WL Gore and Associates have configured and tested a new concealment pattern specifically designed for the reduced engagement range and elevated angles typically encountered when hunting whitetail deer from tree stands. I visited with Guy Kramer of HyperStealth Technologies to gain some insight into this new development. HyperStealth is tasked with visually concealing everything from military personnel to fighter jets to aircraft carriers. So for Guy Kramer, camouflage is 0% fashion and 100% function. Working in concert with Colonel Tim O'Neill and animal vision scientist Dr. Jay Knights, Kramer was one of the key players in the development of the original OptiFade open country pattern. So the difference between the open country and the forest, I mean, there's quite a difference between the two. What is it?
Yeah, the OptiFade open country is designed for a horizontal environment. So from a deer's perspective and the colors that we've done in there, they actually pick up on the horizontal disruption where you're trying to chop up the human shape. Mm-hmm. The OptiFade forest pattern was designed for vertical disruption because you're up in a tree, you've got tree bark running a certain way, you've got tree trunks running a certain way. The deer can see that in this pattern. And you and I may not see that, but they can sure see that. If you put this one out in an open field, they're going to notice a difference.
One of the key characteristics of the horizontal world is that light from above falls evenly on everything. Once we enter the vertical world of tree stand hunting, something almost counterintuitive happens. One would think that looking skyward, that everything becomes brighter. However, that's not the case.
Well, the light is coming down on an angle, but it's also coming through branches, past tree trunks, past leaves. And so what we've done here is we've optimized the colors to simulate that same effect.
Oh, okay. Now, I noticed looking at these that these are made, with the pixels. How is that better than, say, smooth lines and curves and things like that?
The squares, the sharp edges of the squares actually add to a background noise that if you're focusing on the object, your brain will actually interpret it, the sharp corners, as background noise and ignore it. That's something it's seen before. It doesn't want to waste time on it. It wants to go on to the next thing. And it's the same thing with a deer looking at the pattern. If the colors are done correctly and the pattern's been done correctly, if it notices something there and looks directly at it, it will look through it.
The other key scientific element at play in the forest pattern is the emphasis on the micro pattern. The average shot distance for a pope and young whitetail kill is 16 yards. Clearly, at that reduced engagement range, the detail that defines a prey animal's world falls under more scrutiny, so micro pattern becomes key. All right, so say you want to start from scratch. What's the first thing you do? How do you get from the beginning all the way to the end with, something like this?
Well, most of what we do is proprietary or even classified, but the typical run-through is we look at the target that we're trying to conceal. We look at the environment they're going to operate, and then we start to work on colors that are going to work best within that environment. And so we have algorithms that will actually take the colors of the backgrounds, and we use something called a spectrometer, which will tell us the exact colors that we're looking at. with fine detail. And then we pump that into a series of photos, images, or computer data that we've collected. And that'll tell us the best colors to put into a particular operating environment.
While Kramer couldn't tell me everything that went into the execution and testing of OptiFade Forest, he did tell me there were some other principles that factored into the pattern's development. For example, along with the enhanced contrast that occurs, the fractal geometry perceived at ground level is vastly different than what appears with an elevated gaze. As the eyes begin to look skyward, radial patterns emerge more strongly. In the end, a human observer comparing OptiFade Open Country and OptiFade Forest will see vast differences in color configuration and contrast. The same observer would see such differences when comparing a skyward view in eastern hardwoods to a ground-level view of a western landscape. However, true to OptiFade science, human observation has never been the priority. It's always been about becoming nothing in the eyes of prey animals. I'm Kurt Dowsett, and this has been The Science of Nothing.
I can't tell you.
Sure you can. Come on, guy. What are some of the algorithms?
Well,
The cameras aren't rolling, we're done.
I still can't tell you.
What if I took you out and got you a beer? Cool?
No.
Not cool?
No, still wouldn't. The work's classified by the U.S. government. I can't.
Get off my set. Please.